Welcome back to the channel. I've been playing almost nothing besides Longsword Fighter for the past two wipes, so when I recently hit Demon God, I decided to start branching out. I watched Seriously Soapy's hardcore solo self-found challenge and figured I'd give that playstyle a try. I ended up having a lot of fun and plan on doing more of these, so let me know if you like this style of content. To switch things up, I start off with the dual wield perk, since this will force me into a playstyle that I'm unfamiliar with. In fact, this run was my first time trying it, since I was usually starting with weapon mastery. This run was started before they removed the map rotation, so I was forced to queue into the ice caverns a couple of times, and I honestly didn't see a single player in either game. Alright, let's get to it. I'm going to show all the fights I got into and provide commentary over the interesting moments, as well as share some of my thoughts and opinions that this experience gave me. So the first thing I noticed is that Neophyte and Apprentice lobbies are really filled with exclusively Timmies. And this makes sense at first, since they're the lowest ranks, but once you hit Wanderer and especially Pathfinder, your lobbies seem to change from only Timmies to only Chads. So in my opinion, the matchmaking curve could definitely use some smoothing out. The next thing I noticed is how much easier dual-wield fighter is than longsword. Like I mentioned earlier, this is my first time seriously playing with these perks, and it went way better than expected. Longsword has the same core problem that clerics have, in that in order to fight someone, they really have to want to fight you. And this is because if you go for a non-plate build with the longsword, you're going to be out DPS by pretty much every class unless you land a parry. So you're putting half of your faith into your skill of landing the parry, but then the other half of your faith is going into the servers actually working. So that's why most longsword players wear plate and run barricade. So it lets you miss a parry and still fish for another one without being killed just instantly. Dual wield, on the other hand, as you can see in these first few clips, I was just holding W key and left mouse button on people. The weapon mastery lets me easily take range exchanges, and then I'm fast enough to actually close the gap on just about everyone that I ran into. In this clip, I'm running from a Rupture Smokepot Rogue, which from this run was really the only build that I struggled to keep up with. So hopefully they nerf the cooldown of Smokepot soon, because it's way too short. My goal for this run was to get as many kills as possible before dying. I wasn't going down to Crypts or Inferno or opening portals for AP. I was just spawn rushing and hunting people in the ruins and then extracting. So what's crazy is that despite being in the lowest rank in the game, people were getting mad at me and Void for PvPing and were trying to team. I'm hoping that this will get better after the wipe and is just a symptom of people trying to last minute grind out the HR rewards. This fight here is a good example of why weapon mastery can be such a good choice over a crossbow. The long reload time of a crossbow allows you to target large openings to attempt to close the gap, so each individual shot is much more important, as you're very likely only going to get one or two crossbow shots in most fights. Whereas with the recurve, I found it much easier to just sit back, throw like 10 arrows at someone, and then close the gap with sprint to finish them off. In several of these matches, I would see someone dragging tons and tons of mobs. People who are new to the game tend to run through rooms and leave you in situations like this, where the mobs they aggro are actually much more dangerous than them. That was a close call. Throughout the run, I developed a general strategy to find people. My first goal was usually to run to the very middle module and listen for anyone nearby. From there, I'd run out to the graveyard. The Royal Coffin attracts a lot of players, and I know there are several spawns on this edge of the map. So you can run around these modules and typically find 2 to 3 people at the start of a match. After clearing the graveyard, I would change my focus and run all the way east. And if I don't see people on the east border, then I would simply run around the zone, listening through doors for people. In this clip, the spawn rusher became the spawn rushed. I was a little careless with this PvE, and I took a big chunk from the mage just in time for this rogue to jump out at me. I immediately sprinted away, and in retrospect I should have second winded as well. I tend to hold on to second wind too long, but once I finally use it, it gets insta-cleansed by a nearby wisp, leaving me in a tough spot. In a last-ditch effort, I take off my armor and make a break for it. I consider resting here, but I can still hear him over the wall, so I have to go further down to find a safer spot. Here I run into an endangered species, the wizard. My first Dark and Darker YouTube video was running wizard in crafted gear, and wizard was my main before I became a longsword enjoyer. So I've been trying to play wizard again recently, but man, is that class terrible to play for solos. Wizard and Bard are in a similar camp, in my opinion, where they were nerfed repeatedly because of their strength in a team. But that left them in a pretty helpless state for solos. So playing Wizard felt like playing the game on hard mode. You have the least health in the game, very little PDR, and you need a good kit to do any damage. I don't think Iron Mace will ever balance solos separately from trios. So with that in mind, I'm not sure what the solution for Wizard is. But in my opinion, they should start with finding a way to make it so I don't have to sit for half the game. I also want to mention that I am terrible with bows. In my State of the Longsword video, I mentioned that I've been trying to avoid the ranged and ranger meta, so I just don't have that much experience with them. I broke that rule for this run, as I was taking tons of Francescas and arrows, trying to maximize my kills. And I gotta say that it definitely works. In my opinion, there needs to be a limit on how many throwables you can bring in raid. I would say about 6 total throwables, and even a limit to how many arrows you can bring in. I think it would fit the theme of the game better to only allow, let's say, 50 or 60 arrows to be brought in with you in raid. And if you need more than that, you've got to go break some boxes or kill some archers. So if people didn't have an essentially unlimited supply of arrows, they'd be a lot more selective when using them. Now that I've hit level 15 in the run, it's probably a good time to talk a bit more about the perk selection. I've already covered why I'm running dual wield and weapon mastery, but at level 10 I opted for combo attack. I was tempted to run Slayer, especially because I only had one piece of plate equipped, but I decided to stick with the extra PDR, dex, and headshot reduction from the Barbuda helmet over the 5 weapon damage I'd get from Slayer. And for my last perk, I was debating between Adrenaline Spike and Swift, but I've been playing a lot of Rogue the past few days, and that's really shown me that movement speed is still king in the game, so I opt for Swift. Got him. This is a good time to say that if you're trying to be friendly and crouching at someone, don't just expect them to be friendly too. Even if they crouch back, chances are they're an S tier Among Us player looking to kill you. So this wizard just blindly trusted me, despite me not voiping or crouching for some reason, and this is what happened. I just hit Wanderer 3, so I figure now is a pretty good time to do a little gear check. I haven't done that so far. So I've got about 1,300 gold in a stash, purple weapons, some blue armor. You can go ahead and pause if you want to see any of the stats here. I actually had managed to get a pretty good kit by this point. I was happy with what I was rocking. Here I get jump scared by a barbarian in the shadows. This guy is keeping up with me and has no fear, which of course instills fear into me. Especially once he uses Savage Roar, I know I need to run that out. This fight is a good example that PvP is all about spacing and timing. I run away until I've maneuvered him into a favorable position, chuck a protection pot, and start hitting him with some Francescas. Here I notice that he has a demon bat on him, which I try to use to my advantage. Once I feel I've whittled him down enough, I switch to my swords, start trading blows, pop second wind, and try my best to dodge his attacks. Alright, here is the end of the run. I was fighting this warlock at range for a while, and eventually I decided to commit. I hit this guy with several arrows, and now he uses Phantomize, so I know I have him on the ropes. I don't see him anymore, so I figured he must have jumped down the well. Yep, there he is. Here's where things get weird. I noticed the giant worm is stuck behind a box in this room, and I've been chasing the warlock for a while, so I know it's not aggroed to him and it must be on someone else. I see a fighter wearing gold, and I get tunnel vision. Tunnel vision gets worse when he pops second wind, since I figure he must be low. I managed to hit him a bunch of times, but his PDR outlasts me. He's still in a very precarious situation and ends up dying to mobs. And just like that, the run is over. Watching back that last fight is fairly disappointing, since I think I played it pretty poorly. I underestimated how tanky his legendary and golden gear made him. I really should have let him deal with those mobs in that tiny room while shooting arrows at him, but instead I got excited and went for the glory. So at the end, it was a 25 kill run, and I hit Wanderer 3. Not too crazy, but for my first run with dual wield and maybe my 5th or 6th attempt at a hardcore solo self-found run, I'm happy with it. This is quite a bit different than most of the content I've released. So let me know if you enjoyed it by commenting or liking, which helps me know which direction I could take my content in the future. That's it for now. As always, take it easy.